This 200Hz 1440p IPS monitor costs around $165. It's the KOORUI G2721P. There is no way this thing is going to be good. $165 for this? No chance. Now, I've already reviewed a cheap gaming monitor a couple of years ago. It was some 160Hz VA Redmi monitor, and it was pretty garbage, and that cost $150. But I did buy it from Temu, to be fair. I hope, no, I beg that this isn't going to be as bad. But no matter what it's like, I'm still going to play on it until my eyes bleed. And I got it from Amazon anyway, so I can easily return it. It arrived in a box which contained the monitor, a power lead with a power brick, a display port cable and a stand. First impressions, the housing feels very cheap, but it has a red glossy plastic bar to hopefully distract you a bit and remind you that this is a gaming monitor. You also have a little nub dial which is your on-off switch and settings menu control. The monitor stand has various functions like tilting up and also tilting down. There's no height adjustment or rotation, but it's not all bad though. It is compatible with the VESA mount, so you can use an aftermarket monitor arm, which might be a necessity, but more on that later. The base of the stand also feels incredibly cheap, but a positive, it is rather low profile, at least in comparison to my older monitor that spreads itself out like it's tired after a long day at work. Whilst using this monitor, I used the stock monitor stand. I didn't mount it to my monitor arms. I want the full $160 experience. So the price accurately matches the surrounding areas of this monitor. However, I'm going to be looking at what's going to be displayed on the screen, not at the cheap plastic and stand. But this is a telling sign of why this monitor is so cheap. On the back of this, we have the I/O, which has two HDMI 2.0 ports and one DisplayPort 1.4, an audio out jack but no built-in speakers, and a power connector. My other monitor, for reference, has two HDMI ports, one DisplayPort, audio output, speakers built in, as well as four USB 3.0 ports. My old monitor is an Acer Predator XB273GX, which I only got a couple of years ago. And here are the remaining alleged display specifications. It's 200Hz 1440p, it has a 1 millisecond response time, it supports adaptive sync and HDR400, and some other color stuff. So let's get this out of my desk. Nice, okay. So the limited monitor arm could be a problem for some people already, especially if you fall outside of the average height range. Thankfully, I am average in height, but above average where it matters the most. I have a sit-stand desk anyway, so I can just move my desk up and down so it's at my preferred height. Turning it on, this monitor is capable of displaying images. Great news. It's also 200Hz and 1440p and supports HDR, so there's no scams. The only thing left to do is play with it. And so I did, for a very, very long time. More than I should have. I tried it with Deadlock, Overwatch, CS2 and Path of Exile 2 for a more high fidelity experience. And I used this monitor exclusively for about a week and a half. And I'll share with you what I have this monitor set to a bit later, because I think it does need some tweaking. I really couldn't tell much of a difference with my old monitor in the fast-paced shooters I mainly play. I'm only losing out on 40Hz of refresh rate, so there wasn't anything immediate that stood out when I started playing with this. From a motion clarity and competitive FPS point of view, there were no downsides. There might be some from a technical standpoint, like if I did some benchmark testing and displayed some graphs showing various triangles, colors, and said words like gamut, omega oils, HRT, sRGB and delta E's, then there might be things that aren't great in comparison to my older monitor, or the best that's currently available. I could even show graphs with latency measurements and even present to you this little guy whizzing across the screen. However, I don't have those tools available to me, so all I can say is that from a competitive shooter point of view, this monitor won't lose you games, nor will it win them, unless you're moving from a 60Hz monitor. Again, I am only using my eyes here and I have glasses and keratoconus, so they aren't reliable. Maybe this is why these tests exist. After about a week and a half, I reused my old monitor side by side with the KOORUI to see if there was anything majorly noticeable, and honestly, nothing stood out in the competitive games that I played. This was also a terrible idea as I wasn't in a comfortable position. When I tried out HDR and played some more immersive games, mainly Path of Exile 2, things were a bit different. And I am just going by what my eyes see. I'm not a guy that is all about color accuracy and graphical fidelity, which explains why some of my videos look like hot garbage. With HDR on, I noticed some banding more prominently in darker areas, with some of the blacks looking a bit grey and washed. With my other monitor, I didn't have this issue. With the SDR, it ended up with the dark areas being pitch black. I played with some of the monitor settings and it improved substantially. It's still a bit iffy in some darker areas, but an improvement over what it came with. Bear in mind, I only noticed these issues because I was switching between two monitors now. During my week and a half of playing with the KOORUI, I didn't care about the washed out blacks. It was a case of I just noticed a difference when these two were side by side. So in more immersive games that might make use of darker environments, you might just have to tweak around with the settings, which really isn't a bad compromise for such a cheap monitor. From a competitive gaming perspective, I didn't notice any visual downgrades compared to my other monitor, but games that are mainly designed for competitive gaming are set up completely different from a visual standpoint when compared to more immersive ones. This is mainly anecdotal and a description of what I could tell visually. I'm also not comparing it against the best monitor available. If I was moving from, let's say, a 500Hz 1440p QD-OLED, then I might have a different opinion of this monitor. So after playing with the settings, I ended with the following: brightness 60%, contrast 50%, dark field bright effect 0. This is what makes shadows in games appear brighter so you can see them clearly. I think this feature is now redundant as most competitive games don't have ultra dark areas anymore. Response time I set to fast. Setting it to faster caused inverse ghosting, which was noticeable whilst playing. HDR off, adaptive sync on, sharpness 5, gamma 1. For color, I tweaked it a bit and set the blue to 55. I set it to this because the whites looked a bit yellow. Scenario mode is standard, and these are just presets, so you can try these out if you have a personal preference. Honestly, I was expecting a rather bad monitor, but what I got was great. Monitor technology has improved massively over the past few years. Refresh rates are reaching insane levels and panel technology is constantly improving, which means that the budget tier benefits from a higher quality standard. The biggest downside of this monitor is the stand. Even though I have a height adjustable desk, I still found myself wanting to make more adjustments and then realizing that I couldn't. Not only that, but I found the stand to be rather wobbly. Even the slight vibrations of typing would make the monitor wobble a bit. So I'd highly recommend buying an aftermarket monitor arm or a stand for this. I'll put a link in the description of the one I used, but there's plenty of cheap ones out there that offer the functions that the stock stand doesn't have. And I know what you're thinking, are KOORUI a trustworthy company? Well, who knows? They are a subsidiary of a company called HKC, which is a Chinese company, shocking, I know, that has been a manufacturer of displays since around 2001. There's a chance these guys would have been mostly an OEM, so a manufacturer of displays for other companies, and I guess now they're cutting out the middleman and just making their own stuff. However, this is just guesswork, I might be completely wrong. They offer a 3-year warranty going from their website. I've done a bit of research and I haven't seen much said about the RMA process, but as they're somewhat new in comparison to the legacy monitor brands, there's a chance that they're focusing on cheap products and rather generous warranty processes until they have a greater market share. So for now, I see no reason why they should be considered a untrustworthy brand, but it's always best to watch unsponsored reviews of this stuff before purchasing, as the marketing for these brands can be a bit weird, but that's not because they're intentionally being dishonest, it's just because they might just translate their Chinese marketing or just not put much effort into it. From my experience, if you're on a tight budget, this is a fantastic monitor to get. Just buy a monitor arm.